Welcome back to Pistons Jack Chats, where we usually have a guest on the show, but for this week, I thought I'll do a little solo episode here because I want to talk about, as you can see the title of the video, a few trades that I think could really help the Pistons secure a position in the playoffs, potentially a sixth seed, but definitely make the playoffs in that 7 or 8 seed. And we'll get to those in just a moment. But before we do, if you haven't already, if you could please like, subscribe, drop a comment below with your thoughts. It all helps the channel continue to grow, continue to build the Pistons Jack community, and just get more Pistons fans connected around the world. So these three trades here, I will be upfront. None of these are for the biggest names. We're not going to talk about Brandon Ingram. We won't talk about Zach LaVine. You know, even with the De'Aaron Fox news that dropped yesterday, I'm recording this just before the Indiana Pacers game. It won't involve De'Aaron Fox. But as I said off the top, I think these three trades can address some sorely obvious deficiencies in the Pistons roster, as well as also not capping the Pistons or holding them back from making any future big moves. So let's get straight into it here. The first player I want to talk about is Lonzo Ball. Now, Lonzo Ball has, for those that might have, for some reason, missed the past couple of years, Lonzo Ball has missed the past 2 seasons, 2 full seasons, maybe 2.5 full seasons prior to this year with a knee issue. I believe in his left knee. It's something that has unfortunately altered his career from the player he was with the Pelicans and that first season with the Bulls. He doesn't have the athletic burst like he used to. But as you can see here, the trade I've proposed for Lonzo is Simone Fontecchio and a future second round pick the Pistons have from the Knicks for Lonzo Ball. And the reason I've included that second round pick is because all reports say that the Bulls are interested in moving Lonzo if they can get some second round draft pick compensation. Now, obviously, this goes against maybe what Trajan has looked to do in terms of acquiring more assets. But I think for this trade, and in my mind, if I was the GM, I think Lonzo addresses a serious deficiency on this roster in terms of secondary ball handling, playmaking in general, and also provides you some, in theory, 3-point shooting, definitely some solid to good defense. I don't think he's the defender he was before the injury, but I still think at his size of 6'5", decent wingspan, and just his general like awareness. He's a guy that's always racked up steals, and I know that doesn't mean you're necessarily an awesome on-ball defender, but I think he brings something to this team in the backcourt that they lack in terms of defense. No shade to Bees, THJ, even Jaden Ivey when he was healthy. I think Marcus Sass's got some smarts defensively, but he's just a bit undersized, so he definitely helps bring in some defensive grit and awareness to this team. And I think, as you can see, he's an expiring. So you can decide at the end of the season if you want to extend him to a much more team friendly deal if it works out. In terms of how he would fit in, I probably still think you start THJ. You probably keep the starters as is because Lonzo this season, he's at 7 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists on 35% from three. In his most recent 4 games, so very, very small sample here, but they've given him he's been in the starting lineup. He's playing around 25 minutes a game, and he's been putting up 10 points, 4 boards, couple of assists, 2 steals. So bit more of a points boost there. He's taking nearly 8 threes a game. So his field goal is only 39%, but he only takes 1 field goal a game recently inside the arc. So he's pretty much at this stage of his career just a 3-point shooter, and he might score in transition. But I think defense he brings, the passing he brings, and in theory, the shooting he brings Because look, still he's still making three threes a game on 8 attempts. So this is in the past few games, I should say. On the season, he's at uh, two threes made a game on 5 attempts. So if he can give you that with some defense, with some playmaking in transition, and just like, look, he's not going to be a guy that gets into the paint and puts on a ton of pressure at the rim, which is something the Pistons need, particularly from their backcourt. But he can still run an offense. I still think he's a pass first player. And I think like a lot of fans push back on me with when I posted this on Instagram saying, hell no, Marcus Sasser. We need Marcus Sasser. You know, he needs these reps. Ball's going to take those away from Sasser. Sasser is better than Lonzo. And I think the thing we're all missing here is that Lonzo and Sasser, like Lonzo helps Cade, yes. He also helps Sass. He gets Sasser off the ball more and allows Marcus to just be a pure flamethrower, pure heat guy, shoot first. That's who Marcus is. Marcus isn't a point guard. And I don't say that in a bad way. I want Marcus just shooting. The thing with Sass, I think's hurt him at times this season is, especially with Jaden Ivey out, is he comes down the court and you can see him sometimes trying to process, all right, am I running the offense this possession? Am I trying to get my shot this possession? It's why he kind of looks really good next to Cade. We haven't got those minutes in a long time without Jaden. But because when Cade's on the floor, it's clear. His role is shoot when you get the ball, take a floater, maybe move the ball, but your primary focus is shoot and score. And he will do that alongside Lonzo, as well as still getting some reps as a point guard. So I think, you know, bringing in another guard in general doesn't mean Sasser goes back to warming the bench. It doesn't at all. So, and if Jaden Ivey is to come back, same thing. You know, takes the playmaking pressure a bit off Jaden, and just has another guy who can bring the ball up the court. Like going back to Cade, how often have we seen in the past couple of weeks teams just pressure Cade full court? And you know, I think Cade's been outstanding this season. But one of the things he struggles with is turnovers. And when you pressure Cade full court and you trap him in pick and roll, he's going to turn it over. You know, that's just a fact with Cade right now. It's one of his areas of weaknesses. I'm not concerned about it, but it's something that teams know and they will do. If you have Lonzo bring the ball up every 2 possessions. Take the pressure off Cade. Allow maybe you generate a couple of open looks for Cade during the game, which would be huge because right now Cade's got to generate his own looks pretty much 95% of the time. So that's why I like this deal. And I think Fontecchio, just quickly on him, I think whilst Pistons fans have a right to be disappointed with him this season, he's on a team-friendly contract. He fits what the Bulls want in terms of a three-point shooting player. Like the Bulls, I think, are like in the top 5 for three-point attempts this season, probably up there in makes. So they're a very three-point happy team. You get Fontecchio, a guy you can space the court, put alongside Buzelis, their young player. He can play alongside Levine. I think Fontecchio with the Pistons this season, I was really high on him, but I think at the end of the day, he just doesn't. His role on this team is just like very redundant now. He stood out last season because the Pistons had no wings that could um, shoot and kind of hold their own to a degree defensively. So he had a really clearly defined role as a starter last season, and this season I think the foot surgery has affected him, but he just hasn't got the minutes consistently, I think, to find a real rhythm and groove. And that's a product of Ron Holland playing better, Asar Thompson being who he is, Tobias Harris coming in, uh, you know, Cade going to another level in terms of his attempts, Jaden Ivey having more shot attempts, Tim Hardaway Jr. So I think Fontecchio's kind of just been in this, he's been a bit lost and it's been hard for him to find a rhythm. I think if he goes to another team, he'll look like he did a little bit with the Pistons last year if they give him a consistent role of like 18 to 20 minutes a night, whereas the Pistons just haven't been able to do that. And I think for the team, it's kind of a good thing. But I think for Simone, he just doesn't fit this team anymore. But that's my thoughts on this trade. I honestly think of the three, this is definitely the most realistic. It's one I would love to see happen. So let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments below. But let's move next to probably my favorite trade here that I would love to see happen. And that's the Pistons getting CJ McCollum. Now, CJ McCollum I want to just really make it clear off the bat here because people are going to say CJ McCollum for Tim Hardaway Jr. and Simone Fontecchio. Like, why would the Pelicans do that? Like, why would they want to give up a fringe all-star caliber player for two role players who are also, in their late 20s in Fontecchio and early 30s in Hardaway Jr. And what I'll say here is the thinking behind this purely, and the thinking behind any CJ trade that you will see is that the New Orleans Pelicans this season have won 12 games, I believe. I think they are the last seed in the West, if not in the bottom two. They are not going to make the postseason. They're not going to make the play-in. It would be an absolute shock. Now, they are currently a team in the tax. So if the season were to end today, they would have to pay tax for their roster. And that just doesn't make much sense for a non-playoff team, particularly the Pelicans, who I don't think in their history have played the tax, especially if they're not in the playoffs. So the thinking here is the Pelicans want to get off CJ's 33 million, and the Pistons, with their 14 million in cap space, are the perfect team to simply send CJ, get a little bit of salary back, but you don't have to match salary. So here's the deal. As you can see, the Pistons send out Tim Hardaway Jr., Fontecchio for CJ McCollum. Now, immediately for the Pistons, the reason I love this trade is because CJ addresses secondary scoring, secondary playmaking, a bucket getter, and he's a vet. And he's done it before in the playoffs. He's a guy that, yes, he's 6'3", and I think he's 34 years old. Just double checking this. He's 33 years old. He'll be 34 at the end of the season or before next season. So he's still got another couple seasons left, I think, with the way he plays. This season, he's giving you 22 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 45% from the field, 38% from three, and that's on 8 attempts. Excellent pull-up shooter from the mid-range and three-point line. And even if the percentages aren't there at times, he's a threat no matter what. He is a guy that will help Kate Cunningham tremendously this season. And like the title of the video says, he will help them make the playoffs this season. He's a guy I think could really help them get to the 6th seed. Now, defensively, he might be the worst defender on the team. That's just where we'd be at because of the lack of size, lack of explosiveness, athleticism, and just bluntly his age. So you're going to give up a lot defensively with CJ, more than you would with Tim Hardaway Jr. Say what you want about THJ, leads the team in charges, tries. He's got decent size at the end of the day, especially because he's been playing the 2 recently. He's like 6'6". So, you're giving up a bit there, but, CJ, he takes the pressure off Cade. Like, he would help Tobias. Like, I think he can really play make. I know the assists are only at 4 this season, but he's been a guy that he's played off Dame for his whole career. And when Dame's been injured, he's taken the reins. For the Pelicans, I feel like he's been their de facto point guard at times without Murray in the lineup this season. And definitely when it's been when BI and Zion have been on the court, like he's kind of been the point guard. So he can play make, he can run an offense. I think this is just an awesome trade. And yes, you'll have his 30 million next season on the books. But here's the thing, because I know people will say, well, what about when Jaden Ivey's back? Jaden Ivey shouldn't be coming off the bench. He shouldn't. And that's the thing I think with CJ. I think he would be okay with coming off the bench next season on a Pistons team that's in playoff contention. I truly think he would be fine with that. And if he's not, he's an expiring $30 million deal. You have his $30 million expiring. You have Tobias's $30 million expiring. You have 2 big contracts there to go make this big trade in the offseason we keep talking about. So, and if you make the playoffs this year, you also get your first round. You give away that first round pick to the Timberwolves this draft, but you can also now, once again, trade all your future firsts for a big time player. So I think it just makes sense in all angles for me personally. You're not giving up any draft capital here. The Pelicans get under the tax. They get Tim Hardaway Jr., another wing who can space on an expiring deal, which is great for them. And they get Fontecchio, which, similar to what I said about the Bulls, I don't need to go into it too much. His role probably wouldn't be as big on the Pelicans because they already have Trey Murphy. They have, oh my goodness, I'm blanking here. Herb Jones and some other good wing prospects and players in that department. But I think it's a very team-friendly deal that Fontecchio has. So love to hear your thoughts on this. This is probably my favorite trade just because I think it helps Cade, it helps get them to the playoffs. And just the last thing I want to say is these trades are about helping the Pistons make the playoffs this season. This is about getting the Pistons 2 home games at least at LCA and breaking the drought of a playoff win in like 16 years. But also, you bring in CJ. Like the thing I really want to be like push here is that Kate Cunningham right now is currently carrying a ridiculously big load offensively, and I think he likes that. He wants all the usage. He wants to be that heliocentric guy, and he's pretty good at it. He's really good at it. But I think the thing we have to be conscious here is like this workload, it's taking its toll on Cade. Like these turnovers are some like maybe we call them lackadaisical passes, but it's going to wear him down. We're only just hit. We're over the halfway mark, but we're pretty much like there's still like 35 games to play. I don't want Cade Cunningham being worn out like this for the rest of the season. You need to get some playmaking more because like at the end of the day, like I'm not saying he's going to get injured at all, but man, you don't want like I know he's young, and I'm not saying reduce his minutes with any of these trades, but you need to get him some help just to take the load off of him. He can't be generating it every single time. So CJ, I think, helps that immediately and doesn't cap you in the future. And he would help them get to the playoffs. So love to know your thoughts on this trade. Let me know in the comments below. This is the final one here. And I want to shout out my guy, Kyle Metz, at Kyle Metz 23 on Blue Sky and Twitter. We had him up here to discuss some trades earlier in the year, early January, late December last year. And I saw him post this trade, and I think I'll be down for this. So this doesn't address the ball handling, but let me just read out the trade. So we've got the Pistons send out I believe they send out a 2028 second round pick from Miami back to the Heat. So the Heat get their pick back. Now, the Pistons then get Bobby Portis from the Bucks, and then the Bucks send Middleton, Connington, and a future New Orleans Pelican first to the Heat. So the Pistons are really just helping facilitate the deal. They give up a future second, but they get Bobby Portis. And I know Bobby doesn't help with the playmaking duties at all. He doesn't help with the secondary creation or anything of that kind. But the reason I like this trade is because I think one of the things the Pistons miss right now without Jaden Ivey is just a pure bucket getter. Now, Bobby Portis does it in a very different way to Jaden Ivey. He does it in a very different way to CJ McCollum and I guess Lonzo Ball, the other 2 players we've spoken about. But this is a guy that's been consistently in Sixth Man of the Year conversations. He's a guy I think alongside Isaiah Stewart fits really nicely at the 4 off the bench. He's a guy I think while you'd have some defensive deficiencies, you can play him next to Jalen Duran because he can shoot the ball at a really high level for a big or, he's a true power forward. So Bobby Portis on the season in 25 minutes a night, pretty much all off the bench, is giving you 13 points, 8 rebounds, couple of assists. He's not really a guy that blocks shots, but he's doing the scoring on an efficiency of 48% from the field, 38% from, my mistake, 47% from the field, 37% from 3 on around 4 attempts a game. And he's a guy that shoots 82% from the line. Now, most of his shots come in like the mid-range, but Bobby's an excellent rebounder off the bench. He can stretch the floor, really good in the mid-range. So this is a guy, just pure bucket getter, I think would really help the team. Look, like I said, defensively, he's not the best. It's probably why he's never been a consistent starter in his career, because he just doesn't have the athleticism and the knack for being aware on the defensive end, and just has some limitations on that end. But that's why you play him alongside Isaiah Stewart. I think you can play him alongside Asar, alongside Ron, because of his ability to shoot. And he would come off the bench behind Tobias Harris. But I think the thing with Bobby, like he's a guy, we've seen him punish the Pistons and give you like 20 points and a half or 25 on the night, or even if he's not giving you 20, like he'll have you a 15-point quarter And even if he just does that, that's huge. So he does have 30 million on his contract next season, but similarly to what we said, like, you get past the trade deadline and he's basically an expiring when you're looking to move him in the offseason if you don't want to bring him back. So look, I really like this. I think my concerns here would be maybe Miami. I mean, I think that's a really good return for the Heat with where they're at with the Butler thing. Like, just I know Middleton at this stage of career is like injury prone, but getting that first from the Pelicans, I think, is a very nice uh, bonus for the Heat there. Connaughton's just salary, but yeah, I think Bobby could really help this team. Now, uh, you're still going to be without that point guard play, so that's definitely an issue. So you're kind of not addressing that, which is a little bit of a concern. But I think it's just a pure bucket getter, some front court scoring like would be huge. Love Stu to death, my favorite player. Not going to give you any scoring really, except for cleanup opportunities. JD's gotten better, but in terms of how he gets his buckets, it's heavily reliant on Cade or offensive boards. Tobias, like Tobias is struggling right now. You would like Tobias to be more than he has this season, but I think Bobby's just like a fearless bucket getter, and I think you need that now, and I think he would help you in the postseason. So those those are my three trades that I think are one realistic, and two, I think each of those guys would really help the Pistons make a genuine run for the postseason and get them into the playoffs. I think they address some needs on the team and give K the additional support in their various ways, as well as just building out the roster to be more competitive on a night-to-night basis against the best teams in the league to ensure they get a playoff berth. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would love to hear them. But until next time, as always, go Pistons. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and drop a comment below.